Government Order of the Day number 8.
Statutes Amendment Bill, committee stage.
I declare the House in committee for consideration of the Statutes Amendment Bill. Mr Chairman.
Mr Speaker. Waiting for the Speaker to go. The House and Committee on the Statutes Amendment Bill. A call or a point of order, the Honourable Ruth Dyson.
Thank you for that guidance, Mr Chairman. I seek leave for all provisions to be taken as one question for the purposes of debate and voting.
I'm sure there's no objection to that. There is no objection. That will be the process. So the House and Committee on the Statutes Amendment Bill, the question is that parts 1 to 28, schedules 1 and 2 and clauses 1 and 2 stand part. Oh, Christopher Ford.
Thank you very much, Mr Chair. I've been waiting for some time to speak at the committee stage on the Statutes Amendment Bill, and I want to, in my first contribution, draw on two supplementary order papers that are on the table on this bill, one under my name, number 191, and another under the name of the ACT leader, David Seymour, number 207. In essence, those two supplementary order papers are offering the ability for the government to have a get-out-of-jail-free card, because my SOP 191 does include something and looks to insert something in the bill which I think is non-controversial, which I think most parties would agree to, is not a massive departure from policy, was not a large policy issue which would require the debate in a separate piece of legislation. Unfortunately for this House, the contents of my supplementary order paper are contained in another piece of legislation, which is in the name of Nuk Kurako, a Members' Bill, Nuk Kurako, National List MP, which essentially looks to amend the Airport Authorities Act of 1966 to allow airport authorities, or airports, to advertise in other mediums other than the newspaper when they want to sell luggage that has been lost or left at airports.
What a genius.
Now, just to clarify, the law does need to be changed, because at the moment, the Act as it stands only allows airports to advertise the sale of lost luggage that they are now taking the responsibility for via the way of a newspaper advertisement. So this change, both contained in Mr Kurako's bill and also within my SOP 191 to the Statutes Amendment Bill, wouldn't change the world entirely. And I know you shouldn't say that when it's your own SOP, but it would save this House, this Parliament, and the taxpayer a significant amount of money. When Mr Kurako had his bill pulled from the ballot, he said at the time that it was an issue that had been raised with him as someone who was a Member of Parliament in and around his daily work engaging with the industry. At that time, I think I had roughly been the tourism spokesperson for the opposition for around about 4 or 5 months, and I think I took a pretty aggressive approach to making sure I was engaging with stakeholders, including Christchurch Airport, the local airport of Mr Kurako, and not once was the issue of the advertising of sales of lost luggage raised to me, not by the Christchurch Airport, not by Queenstown Airport, not by Wellington Airport, my local airport, not by the extensive visit to Auckland Airport, both domestic and international, which I had the pleasure of visiting, not by Air New Zealand, who I spent a complete day with, getting to know their operation. So I think Mr Korako's assertion that this is a major issue for the likes of airports or airlines is slightly, and I'm being slightly diplomatic, wide of the mark. So in an effort to try and save some time of this House, I think this is a perfect opportunity through a Statutes Amendment Bill to address the issue that Mr Korako thinks is so important that he thinks it's worthy of a member's bill in the ballot to address this great gap in our tourism sector. So my SOP 191, would essentially do everything that Mr Korako's bill, which is before the House as a member's bill after being pulled from the ballot, would do. So if an airport found itself overwhelmed with a quantity of luggage that it thought it needed to offload, my bill would, my SOP would allow that airport to, other than advertise, Mr Chair,
Christopher Foy.
other than to advertise, and let's give an example in Mr Korako's own patch of Christchurch, maybe other than to advertise in the Christchurch press that the Christchurch airport was going to have a sale of lost luggage, it would also allow Christchurch airport to advertise online. Other modes of communication. I guess that would also open the option of radio advertising. I'm not sure if Mr Korako has thought about that. Maybe that if my SOP doesn't get through, maybe that was something that he could raise at the Select Committee. I'm being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here. But the Statutes Amendment Bill vehicle as it stands is a great way, and is a way that we're using now, to tidy up legislation, to make sure that things that aren't controversial shouldn't take up the time of this House. And I think the fact that this SOP had to be brought to this House, and there's another SOP in the name of David Seymour, which I'll get to, and I'm sure he'll be down at some stage to talk to it, should have been included in the Statutes Amendment Bill, which speaks to the point that I believe that the Members' Bill ballot process in Parliament is being abused by the government. It is the Members' Bill ballot, if people at home don't know how it operates, it is a little bit like lotto. So members of this House who aren't members of the executive, I understand, get to put a piece of legislation that they want to, that they either feel very passionately about, or something that is a local issue, and they can put it into the ballot, and every so often we have a draw, and a bill, if your bill is drawn from the ballot, then it gets debated and can possibly get debated in this House. I think that process should be used for bills that are worthy of the time of this House. And quite bluntly, advertising lost luggage by airports and by any other means than the newspaper should not take up a first reading, should not take up a select committee process, should not take up a second committee and third reading time in this House. Mr Korako's bill will cost taxpayers thousands of dollars, if not tens of thousands of dollars, potentially creeping up to $100,000. We have at the moment a situation where services out in our country are struggling for funding. Yet this government and that particular member thinks that this issue is such a big issue that it should be debated and go through the complete legislative process in the House. I also think the government knows it's got it wrong, because Jerry Brownlee at one stage tried to have it go past through all stages in an attempt to save face. That didn't work. I'm not sure if this is going to work, because I believe also that any member of this House, and maybe I shouldn't tell New Zealand First this, that any member of the House can object to my SOP and then it's off the table. It will not happen. But I think we should try and save those tens of thousands of dollars and the time of this House, and respect the process of a member's ballot, and not have these kinds of ballot filler pieces of legislation anymore. So we can do away with that. in Mr Korako's case. We can also do away with it in the case of Mr Seymour's SOP, which I believe will streamline the process for a bill under the name of Matthew Ducey. So I guess the ball is now in the government's court and also in New Zealand First Court if they actually want to save the taxpayer some money. Because there are 2 SOPs of the 3 SOPs that are on the table now that will potentially save a couple of $100,000. And a lot of time of select committee process, of time that issues that New Zealanders really care about could be discussed and debated, and we could progress either inquiries or legislation through this Parliament that will make a difference to the people of New Zealand. Advertising the sale of lost luggage is not on anyone else's radar other than Nuk Korako's. No one. I want to know from Mr Korako where this issue came from, because I think there would possibly be one person or two, Mr Korako's executive assistants, who probably have to wade through quite a bit of research because of this, who is actually concerned about this issue.
He's a genius.